It's the Sittin Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
Welcome back to the Sittin Sportside podcast with yet another Major League Baseball division preview. This time talking about the New York Mets division. That is the National League East. It's one of the best divisions in all of baseball. And if I had to say what was the best division, I'd probably say it's the National League Central, which will be done probably on Wednesday. Or no, that one will be done maybe tomorrow. You know what? It'll be up before the season starts. But the National League East, as the music officially starts for the podcast, is probably a close, really close second. Not probably. It's definitely second, and it's a close second. The Marlins probably weighs them down a little bit, and we'll get into everything with this division, of course, right here on 1045theteam.com and youtube.com/team1045. And, of course, you can find all those podcasts on the Sittin Sportside podcast playlist there. You can find that 1045theteam.com as well. We'll get into it in the National League Central podcast, while that one's a little bit better. And I think it has to do with the Marlins bringing this guys down, and the Reds and Pirates, who are not as good last season, with the Reds being just 4 games better than the Marlins, being more improved than this Marlins team. But stay tuned, because I actually like some pieces of the Marlins. Let's start with my first place team. And this is going to be the same for the Central. National League Central. Oh my goodness, this is hard. I think I have an idea of who I have coming in first place. Maybe the East more than the Central. So obviously we'll get to it. But this is really hard, because one of these teams that you look at the roster and say this could be a really good team, I have coming in fourth place. And I tell myself this is where I'm going with. But I could totally just change it when push comes to shove here. But my first place team, without further ado, we're over 2 and 15 into this podcast, so gotta get to it. I had the Washington Nationals winning this division. I'm not sure I think this is becoming more of the chalk pick. I'm not sure there is a chalk pick, but I think there's becoming a lot of love around this Nationals team, even after losing Bryce Harper. I think it starts with this. It starts with the fact that you still have Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg at the top, and you brought in Pat Corbin. You still have Adam Eaton in right field. You still have Victor Robles and Juan Soto. Soto's become a superstar for last season because of the injuries, and he's now a guy that they feel comfortable to take the role that is now vacated by Harper leaving. And Robles, who was injured, part of the reason why Soto got the chance before Robles could is because Robles was injured. And now that he has an opportunity to play every day in center field, there's a lot of hype around him too. And Adam Eaton's still a good right fielder. And while there's still the health problems, not to mention that Michael Taylor is going to miss significant time with left knee and left hip sprains, who was a very serviceable backup to all 3 of these outfield positions. That's a really good outfield. Add in the fact that you have Trey Turner still at shortstop, Anthony Rendon at third base. You bring in Brian Dozier, who can have a huge bounce back year at second base. The pressure's a little bit off, but to get him at the price that they did was very, very good. Who do you take, him or Jed Lowry? I don't know, Mets fans. I mean, with Lowry being injured, we'll get to him in a bit here, but I think Dozier might be at the price, might be the better option. Even though Lowry was really, really good, and I think if he comes back this season, can be really, really good and playing a really important role for sure. Ryan Zimmerman and Matt Adams, I think, are a really good righty-lefty platoon at first base. And then you have Howie Kendrick, who's had a mild left hamstring and is doing baseball activity, but he hasn't been ruled out yet for opening day at the time of this podcast. And whether he makes it or not, he's still an option to back up multiple positions, including left field, another outfield option. So he's got a potential to make an impact. The guy was probably forgotten because he missed a lot of last year with injury and has been really good in past years, for whether it's the Nationals, but more so, of course, as you know, in his stint with none other than the Los Angeles Angels. Another reason why I love this team: Yan Gomes, Kurt Suzuki. They're expected to split times, but they're really good starting catchers. And now Wilson Ramos from 2 years ago, he was probably, a really good option. And we'll get to Wilson Ramos in a little bit. Spencer Kieboom looked really, really good in the major leagues. With his brother Carter. Are they related? Am I getting this wrong? Both Liam Kieboom. I'm pretty sure they're related. But actually, Carter Kieboom looked a little bit better offensively, but Spencer Kieboom has an opportunity to make an impact at catcher. But it's Gomes and Suzuki. This is the reason why. I lost myself because how good the Kiebooms have looked. But Kurt Suzuki comes over from the Braves. Okay, you steal Kurt Suzuki, fine. That's not a big deal. The Braves, we'll get to them, like I said, in a little bit. They have options. They're not going to hurt losing Kurt Suzuki. But another acquisition by this team was Anibal Sanchez, who had a really good year last year with the Atlanta Braves. And his catcher that caught him most of the time, if not all the time, was Kurt Suzuki. So you bring in a personal catcher for a guy who pitched really well last year and continues to look decent in spring training, added to an already really good rotation. And then you also add the fact that you have Jeremy Hellickson, who you're not going to need for the first couple weeks this season, but once you need that fifth starter, has looked really, really good in spring training as well. Oh, not to mention you still have Henderson Alvarez, Joe Ross, and Eric Feedy, who have opportunities to get that fifth spot with Joe Ross, the guy you want to take it after having some times in the minor leagues. So this is a really good rotation. An offense that still has so much talent. Catching position that has great defensive talent and good offensive talent. And then a bullpen that has Sean Doolittle at the back end of it. Trevor Rosenthal, who looks really, really good as a non-closer option. Justin Miller, who was good for them last season. Kyle Barraclough, who can be really good. Koda Glover as well. And Tony Sipp, a left-hander guy who looks really, really good. And Koda Glover, for all, just for good measure, though, he is out with injuries right now. But if he comes back, really important part of this bullpen that could be really, really good. So all around, balancing it out, the Washington Nationals has the best roster in my opinion, and that's why I have them in first place, winning the National League East. Second place, man, this is so tough, and this can't be any tougher. Believe me. I got to go with the Atlanta Braves. And here's the reason why. This is a team that hasn't gotten worse. They've only gotten better. I kind of said this about the Yankees. Maybe in the Red Sox, too. Actually, no. Not even true. That's not true about the Red Sox. I don't think they got better. They might have gotten better a year later. You know, Devers might be better. But go listen to the LE's podcast and tell you my thoughts on the Red Sox. But similar to the Yankees, they didn't really lose anything. But they've gained things. You know what I mean? They bring back Nick Markakis. So they didn't upgrade right field. But they didn't lose. I mean, he had a really good year last year. So they bring him back. They still have Anderson Inciarte in center field. You still have Ronald Acuna Jr., who if Devers is going to have a step forward, you can expect Acuna, at least in a full season this year. Even if he doesn't step forward, what he did last year, if he does it for a full season this year, they're going to be really, really good. Shortstop, maybe Dansby Swanson isn't going to be the guy you expected him to be. But he's still a solid option at shortstop position. And now that you bring in somebody, here's the guy you brought in, Josh Donaldson, who has one of the best WARs when he was really good. So not counting last year, I think 5 years. I think 2013 to 2017. Maybe just 2018 too. He has the most WAR, I think, behind Mike Trout. So he's a really good player. And if he can recapture anything that he was pre-injury, and he looked okay for the Indians when he was playing for them last year. You could tell he was still bothered by some kind of injury, but he looked okay. Now put him in this position. Man, that's a huge acquisition. I mean, Johan Camargo, who will now be a utility guy for this team, play all over the infield, was pretty darn good, I think, in that role, but he wasn't good enough to be an everyday player. Now, he might be the everyday shortstop if Swanson continues to struggle and struggles really bad. But Donaldson as an acquisition, that's a big acquisition. That's really good. That can make the team better. Oh, but by the way, I forgot to mention Freddie Freeman. He's still there. Probably the best first baseman. Is he the best first baseman in baseball? He might be. I think you could make that argument. I think you could really make that argument. And then Ozzie Albies. The power numbers might not be there again this season. Like, he's not going to get 20+ home runs, but even if you drop him down 6 in the lineup, he's still a big part of this team. He's got a good glove at second base, and he can really, really hit. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I just mentioned the fact that they lost Kurt Suzuki. They still have Tyler Flowers, and they brought in Brian McCann, who loves being in Atlanta. He's a really good defensive catcher, manages the pitching staff well, and he's a good hitter. So you add him to the fold. Not to mention you have Wilson Contreras' brother, William Contreras, waiting in the minor leagues if anything should happen there. a pretty good guy to have in the minor leagues. Last year, of course, he only played rookie ball, but 285, 11 home runs, minor leagues. I mean, it's a team that has such a bright future, and I think they're going to continue to play well this year. Really good offense. Got to talk about the rotation. This is where I almost put them lower in the division. Because let's not forget, this is a team that won 90 games last year, and it was good enough. I'm not sure 90 games will be good enough this year. The Nationals were 82 and 80. Phillies were 80 and 82. I think these will be better. Mets were 77 and 85. So they're going to need to be better than the 90 wins maybe to win the division. And with how good the Central, as I mentioned, is going to be, and who knows if the Rockies can beat up on some West teams to make them have a quote-unquote inflated record. Could be a tough wildcard race too. And that's where the concern comes in for this rotation. This might be some of the best depth for future. Dynasty depth, if you will. In all of baseball. Local product, Ian Anderson. Joey Wentz, Kyle Muller, Colby Allard, Mike Soroka, who likely begin the season with AAA, but played a little bit in the major leagues last year. Kyle Wright, who may or may not get an opportunity this year. Tuki Toussaint, who probably will be in the rotation early on in the year. Really, really good young players. Fulton Avich was injured going into the year. Sean Newcomb, still good, but maybe not an ace type pitcher. Maybe more of a 3 or a 4. Kevin Gausman also injured going into the year. Julio Teheran's your opening day starter, I believe. He's a really good option, but look, he hasn't been consistent. He's a good pitcher. So while I love this rotation and what it could be, Shen product Ian Anderson might have to be Juan Soto into this rotation. So by that I mean rush into it because of the injuries, and he could do really, really well. That's how good this team is. Like a Soroka, if he gets back on track, Colby Allard could be really, really good. So because they have really good young pitchers who can translate right away, ones that are going to get an opportunity right away, like Kyle Wright, who looked really good in spring training. Tuki Toussaint, who has really good minor league numbers, who hasn't yet proven it, but could. That is why I still have them here, because they have a rotation that has injury concerns, no question. But I think it still could be really, really good. And the fact that could still be really, really good, the offense could be just as good as it was last year. And like I said, even better with now Donaldson and even Brian McCann coming and playing. That's why they're my second place team. Don't know who the closer is going to be, but I do think they have a pretty good bullpen. Aridis Vizcaíno, whether he's the closer or not, good reliever out of the bullpen. They might be better off going with matchups, honestly. Brian Snicker, the manager, might be better off going matchups like a lot of other teams do. But AJ Minter, solid lefty. Johnny Venters, solid lefty. Great comeback story. Comeback player of the year, deserving last season. Jesse Biddle, another great, good left-handed hitter. Dan Winkler, who was flirting with save opportunities last year. Max Fried, who could be a rotation spot. He could even be rotation. Another good. Add him to the list. That's why I like this rotation. So the bullpen, though, I think needs to be better. Like, it's not great. I think it's actually borderline good, but they could really benefit from the signing of Craig Kimbrell. That's the team that really needs it the most. He's also been linked to the Brewers with their issues that we'll talk about in the NL Central preview podcast. But this is the team I think that needs it the most and should go out and get him because he's been here. He's been in Atlanta. It's where he came up. He'd be a perfect acquisition for this team for the regular season. And I know he wasn't great in the playoffs last year for sure. And I was making fun of him more than anybody. Still won a World Series. And they need him the most because they don't have a set closer. And I think Vizcaíno and Minter are better off in the 7 or 8 roles in matchup situations. So, perfect opportunity for Craig Kimbrell. Don't know if it's going to happen, but they need it. They need to get a little bit better bullpen-wise, and they probably might trade some young pitching for a bullpen arm at the deadline this year. That is now July 31st. And if you're not trading by July 31st, you get nobody. No more waiver trade deadlines. So they're going to need to address it sooner rather than later. What's easier than signing Craig Kimbrell? Obviously, it's not easy because he hasn't signed yet. And he probably is asking for a lot of money in a lot of years that they probably don't want to give. But what's easier, giving up people or signing a guy? Naturally, it's signing a guy. But of course not if it's not the deal that you want. Let's go to third place. The Philadelphia Phillies. Bryce Harper. He didn't go far, Mets, Braves, and Marlins fans. He didn't go far. Of course. Bryce Harper in the Philadelphia Phillies. You would think they might have given me a bump. Like the Harper signing might have given me a bump to put them ahead of the Braves. It was so close, and I almost did it. And it's deserving. This offense is really, really good. It's all surrounded by Bryce Harper, but let's not forget the signing of Andrew McCutchen, who's still got a lot of years left in him, I think. A lot of good years. At least 3 or 4 good years left in him. You trade for Gene Segura, who is a journeyman all of a sudden. He gets spent on like a 4th team in 5 years or whatever it is. He keeps getting traded, but really good shortstop option, I think. I don't know why he keeps getting traded, but he's really good shortstop option. And then you trade for JT Realmuto. You lose a good prospect in Sixto Sanchez, who is a good prospect for the Miami Marlins. A little pre-Marlins talk here. We'll get to them a little bit, but Sixto Sanchez, good prospect for them. But you still have JT Realmuto. Add him to this team. And then you still have Rhys Hoskins, power guy, in the 4 hole, probably behind Bryce. Cesar Hernandez, speeds guy. If he's not hitting first, he's hitting 8th, and he's going to be really, really good. Or not. Who knows what they're going to do. I know that the Nationals, getting back to the Nationals real quick, are going to hit Robles 9, Adam Eaton 1, Trey Turner 2, start the season. That could be tantalizing. Especially if they can all get on base for the big guns, and Juan Soto and Anthony Rendon. But still, right back to the Phillies. Odubel Herrera was one of their best hitters at some points last season. So add in the fact, I haven't mentioned third base, but I think Maikel Franco and Scott Kingery in a platoon role could do really good things there. This is an amazing offense. Add in the fact that you're playing in Citizens Bank Park for most of your time. It's going to be a good offense. It's going to be a good offense. It's going to be a great offense. What am I talking about? Great offense. You still have depth in the outfield, Nick Williams, and who knows how long Aaron Altaro will be there, but you still have that. You have Ramon Quinn, who also has some depth. Such a good team, man. Although Quinn has right oblique injury. Quinn might not be ready to go. But like I said, they have depth as well. Like Nick Williams was starting for this team last year, and they still won 80 games. So really good offense. The rotation has an ace in Aaron Nola. Has a guy who used to be an ace in Jake Arrieta, who could possibly recover from any injury that he might have had last season and be a really good pitcher this year. Nick Pivetta and Zach Eflin and Vince Velasquez at the back end, I think, are really good options. So whether they decide, maybe they decided to sign Dallas Keuchel, I love the Arrieta signing. So I like the rotation. I really do. I really do like the rotation. Don't get me wrong about it. But I think when you look at Pivetta, Eflin, and Velasquez, I think it's hard because I just defended a team that didn't have a lot of proven players. And Pivetta proved he was good last year. Eflin had really good moments last year. Vince Velasquez had really good moments between, I believe, in his time. He had decent, he had some time in Houston, but it's mainly been his time in Philly that he's proved that he can really pitch. So you're probably yelling at me right now, Phillies fans, like, how can you be like these guys who are unproven from the Braves? You still have confidence in them just in case the big guns aren't ready, but you can't have faith in guys who have proven that they could be actually pretty serviceable and really good rotation guys. And Jake Arrieta has that same proof in the pudding somewhere, but they're still concerned he's not going to get back there. He's not going to get back to the sideline days. But he's healthy. Could he be better? I think he can be better. And I really hope he is because he's on one of my fantasy teams, and it's really important for me. It's a big year for me there. Of course. Well, it's not a big year for fantasy, but I can't honestly say that I am that, how shall I say, not concerned with some of those guys. Can they be a difference-making player? I just don't know about it. I really don't. And I think it might have to do more with the fact that, Velasquez has got good seasons, but he still had a 4 ERA. Nick Pivetta was good last year, but his ERA still ended up at 4.77. Zach Eflin, while he's improved on his 5.54 and 6.616 in his first 2 seasons, still ended up with a .36. So these guys have looked decent, but they still end up with ERAs in the 4s. That's not good. And how shall I say it? I expect better from the Braves, I guess, even though Aaron Nola's so good. Oh, my goodness. He's going to be lost because you have such good pitchers in this division. He gets lost behind Max Scherzer. Might even get lost behind Strasburg. Might even get lost behind, and of course you're going to get lost behind Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard. But man, oh man, Noel's really, really good. And I think that's something you need to hang your hat on. If you've lost me a little bit here, I do have to say, like, the Phillies are really, really good. All three of these teams are over 500 and competing for a playoff spot. So something has to give, right? Bullpen, though, David Robertson, probably the closer. Sir Anthony Dominguez could also close. Who knows? Hector Neris, I think, is really good in this for this team. Pat Neshek could be really, really good. Juan Nicasio and Tommy Hunter. You know, Hunter is injured. There's a lot of good acquisitions they've gone for this bullpen. So there's high expectations with the bullpen, and that's good. That's something you didn't have last season, and a big reason why you kind of fell out of the race. So look, Phillies fans, Harper did it. He made you guys an uber contender if you weren't already one, which you were. But I guess part of me still thinks this is a team that might not get the job done because of some shortcomings from the pitching staff. I think that's plain and simple how I'll put it. That leaves the Mets in fourth place, and I think it's simply because this has the most to go downhill, the most potential to go downhill. I want the Mets to be good, and I've never been a Mets fan. Even as a Yankee fan, I know some Yankee fans are like, "Oh, the Mets are harmless, so I don't mind if they're good. I'll root for the Mets too." I've never been that way. That's just personal. I think when you have friends who are Mets fans and you see them when they are good in the World Series, you kind of, and sorry for those who might be listening, like, "Oh, you hate me?" No, I don't hate you. I don't hate you. I just never been rooting for the Mets. This year I am. I want them to be good. I think it'll be fun for this team to be good. They bring in Wilson Ramos. They bring in Robinson Cano. They bring in Keon Broxton. They bring in Edwin Diaz. They bring back Juris Familia. They bring in Justin Wilson. I just like going on with that. That's a lot of good players. Let's take him to the lineup. Ramos, I know he's got some minor injury concerns, but that's a solid catching option. I think when you look at Todd Frazier, if he comes back from the oblique, he's a solid option at some point for somewhere. But ultimately, I look at Pete Alonso as the guy. I love Pete Alonso. And the fact that he's probably going to get an opportunity to start right away because of the injury to Todd Frazier looks really good. And Dallas Smith also looked really good in the preseason, or in the spring training. So I think Amed Rosario will take another step forward. I think Jed Lowry, when he's healthy, could be really good at third base. He's got a left knee injury. But keeping Adeiny Echeverria in New York, coming over from the Yankees in a limited role last season, in a big role, actually a big-time role. Great defender. That's big. Michael Conforto, I think, is going to take a step forward this year and be really, really good. Brandon Nimmo is a solid outfielder, a guy who was looking at a team that had Jay Bruce and said in Cespedes, and Conforto was like, am I going to get an opportunity? Well, you had it last year. You showed you could play. You kind of fell off a little bit, but you're still a really good player. I mentioned Keon Broxton. I think he's my preference in center field because the bat and the speed is really there for the offense, and Lagares has never really shown that. But Lagares is a hell of a center fielder, probably the better center fielder, which is saying something because I think Broxton's a really, really good center fielder. So you have the defense, I think, for this team. You have some more offense that DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Wheeler did not have last year, but that's probably the best. You know what? I do think, I didn't really spend much time on this, but I do think Scherzer, Strasburg, and Patrick Corbin are a tad bit better if they're all healthy than the Mets. It sounds blasphemous. I know Mets fans are yelling at me right now. But, Syndergaard has had his injuries as well. Zach Wheeler missed an entire season. Let's not forget about that. So, if you want to say, Strasburg's injury history is enough to bring it down, you could also say the same thing about Syndergaard. And so I think if you're looking at those three, I think what Corbin did last year, if you are expecting that to happen again, which I'm not expecting those exact numbers, but I think they could be really, really good. So by expecting that to happen, I think it's a little bit better than what Wheeler did last year. And expect what Wheeler did last year is also kind of, it's not a pipe dream, but it's also something that may or may not happen. So when all is said and done, when push comes to shove, I actually do think the top three for the Nationals is a little bit better. But this is a really good top three. And then, yeah, Steven Matz is having a good spring. And what you can get out of Jason Vargas is hopefully something. Because the depth behind this is not great. Corey Oswalt. It's not great. But if you can get something out of Jason Vargas, Man, that's really, really good. And then you add a really good bullpen. The best closer probably in baseball. Behind, I still think Kenley Jansen is my best closer. But last year, Edwin Diaz is the best closer and most saves. Really good ERA, really good strikeout numbers. Set up by Juris Familia. Justin Wilson, a good lefty. Robert Gazelman in the bullpen now full time for sure. Last year was really, really good. So that can only continue, I think. Just a lot to like about this Mets team. I think they'll be over 500. That's 4 teams in this division over 500. I know I might say the same thing about the Reds. Or not the Reds, but in the Central Division. That all of them are over 500. So if they're all over 500, who's going to be under 500? I get that. But the reason... Let's end this. Let's end this Mets stuff and get to the real quick thoughts on the Marlins, then we'll get out of here. We'll wrap this podcast up. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I think the biggest reason why I had to put the Mets 4th is because they have the biggest potential to bust. Like, they're on the roller coaster that maybe drops straight down. If that makes any sense. They have the most likelihood of not being good. That's the simple terms. That's layman's terms. And that's why I had to put them 4th. But who knows? This could be a team that can finish in first. And I'll say the same thing about the Central when I talk about it. I think for real, I was so close to making this the best division because I really do think that there's 4 teams that can finish first, and then and the team that I have coming in first, the Nationals could finish in 4th. I truly believe that. The Central, I don't necessarily know if I go past 3 teams with that kind of thought process. I'll get to it in that podcast. But truly, I think that these 4 teams are all interchangeable. And that's why this division is so polarizing, and it's going to be really fun to watch this season. And while overall the Marlins bring them down and make the Central probably the best division overall, this will probably be my favorite division to watch and monitor throughout this season. That sounds like I'm wrapping it up, but no, Marlins fans, I did not forget about you. Let's give a quick preview on the Miami Marlins. There's going to be some fun stuff to watch this year because you're going to have opportunities to watch some veterans who are at the end of their career that you may or may not like. Some of you are probably like, why should I give a crap about seeing Curtis Granderson in one of his last seasons? You really shouldn't, but you're going to. Neil Walker, once again, you really shouldn't care, but you get an opportunity to watch him. That one, I think Curtis Granderson maybe a little bit more has that kind of appeal. Let's get to the young players. And Martin Prado's fun to watch too. And I know you're probably like, we're tired of watching Martin Prado. He's exactly injured again. He's not even guaranteed a spot, actually, if you have Miguel Rojas playing shortstop. Starling Castro, good veteran player to watch. Wait, the young players, let's get to it. Jorge Alfaro, you want to see what he can bring in the catcher position? He was part of the acquisition for JT Realmuto. You want to see what you got, one of the positions that you got for that trade. Did Derek Jeter do well in that deal? So that's something to watch. Brian Anderson, really good last season. Well, he could do it again this year. That'll be fun to watch, in my opinion. If you're looking to get look at young players, the way they're playing this season. Luis Brinson, can he improve and be a really good power guy, good speed guy, and actually be more consistent than he was last season? And then a little bit of a stretch here, but Gary Cooper, could he be something? He's a former Yankee. He kind of is a journeyman, first base, right fielder. Can he be something? Could be fun to watch. And then where it really gets to the point is watching this rotation. Trevor Richards, Pablo Lopez, Sandy Alcantara, and Caleb Smith. Those are 4 young pitchers. Not much MLB experience, but Richards and Lopez especially have looked really good in spring training. Smith as well has looked good. Alcantara has, had some really good starts last year. It's really going to be a really fun rotation to watch. So there's really good young rotation starters to watch. And then you have Urania, who maybe he'll hit Acuna again this year. So he's also fun to watch. Maybe not. Maybe not because of that. But those are 4 really good young pitchers. So you have some batters to keep an eye on. You have Jorge Alfaro. Who knows if Sixto Sanchez will have an opportunity. That could be a 5th young pitcher to watch. But there's a lot to think. Like, do we have something here? Do we have a rotation that can put something together? I know that there's pessimism because the Phillies are going to be good for a long time because of Harper. The Nationals don't look like they're going anywhere. The Braves are also really, really young. And then even the Mets, even though they brought in veteran guys, they still have good young cores. And DeGrom, if they lock them up, and Syndergaard aren't going anywhere in the next 2 or 3 years. So you're probably telling me, like, yeah, sure, we'll see what they have in them, but it's going to be a tough division to win the next 5 seasons. Anyway. But I just think it's going to be interesting to watch because if they actually are really good pitchers, they could eventually be the surprise team in 2020 or 2021 because of these young guys. That's the hope. Bullpen-wise, just to give some names, just in case you want to know about it, Sergio Romo will be their relief pitcher, probably trade bait. I think Martin Prado's trade bait as well. I think Neil Walker's also trade bait. Drew Steckenrider, I think, could be trade bait. I think he's the Kyle Bearclaw this season. He might have an opportunity to close at some point, but will ultimately probably be traded by the end of the year. Maybe even Adam Conley is a lefty. Wei Yin Shen, former starter, probably be in the bullpen this year. Also could be maybe trade bait. Who knows? But overall, while this team brings down the overall talent of the division to make the Central probably the best division, this is really going to be really a fun division to watch, and I still have reason to actually watch the Marlins when they're playing the Mets. I still think those are going to be fun games to watch. I really do. Hold me to it. At EricH1045, tweet at me. If you disagree with any of these, tweet at me at EricH1045. All of the previews will be up by Wednesday morning. And 5 of them are already up, so you're just waiting on the NL Central ones. So you can find those at 1045theteam.com. Click on the podcast tab and click on Sittin Sportside Podcast. It'll take you to the YouTube playlist that is on youtube.com/team1045, and it's called the Sittin Sportside playlist. Of course, I will do one more podcast on Thursday morning, the day before all of the games begin. That will give you my prediction of the World Series, give you my wild card teams that I've yet to give you in these previews, as well as my award picks. Also give you Mike James at Mike James 1045. Shoot him a tweet. He needs it right now. He's still recovering from a minor. I don't know if it's minor, but it's an injury nonetheless. And so we'll give you his predictions as well on that date. So it should be a really, really fun podcast there. And Sundays at 11 a.m. thanks to DeAndrea's Pizza. Visit DeAndrea's Pizza. Go to www.deandreaspizza.com to learn more. But brought to you by DeAndrea's Pizza, it's Sittin Sportside Sunday at 11 a.m. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. till 12 o'clock or till Yankee baseball. Should be a really fun time, and so should baseball season. I'm really looking forward to it, and so should watching the National League East division. Once again, I am Eric Hanneman. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Sittin Sportside podcast. I personally thank you for Sittin Sportside on 1045theteam.com.